what's up everyone? This is the final part of my Little Pet Bass whiskey. This is gonna be all the stuff I learned, having a little whiskey. All the little things, just the little bitty details, little bitty things that I find interesting are the things that I can relate to fishing, right? Like actual trying to catch bass, like things I've noticed over the years that now kind of makes sense with kind of seeing how he reacts to certain things. It makes a lot of sense. So those are the things I'm gonna share. I had a lot of questions, a lot of comments, a lot of different things. I'll go over those as well. I'll kind of go why I didn't do certain things. I've had a lot of people ask for, like all kinds of stuff. I'll get into all of it. But this is it. This is the number one thing that I have seen and that I have found out with why he doesn't eat. It's not even close. And I think this goes on all the time in our lakes. And I think it's probably maybe the most misunderstood and probably the one that is very hard to figure out, in the sense of I don't think we really ever know what's going on, but this is the reason why. So let's jump on in. Like I said, good day today. I'm doing it inside because it is absolutely freezing outside. So anyways, let's begin. If you haven't seen the rest, if this is your first time watching this, I've done 3 videos prior to this. I'll try to list every one of them, right, as they come across. These are the 3 videos I did before this that kind of give you an idea of where it all started. And this is the last one. This is the main one. This is the one I actually find the most interesting. So let's begin. The number one reason why whiskey doesn't eat. It's basically what I would call water, like his environment. Like the water that he's in is unstable. Okay, if there is anything unstable about his environment, which is mainly a lot of times a water issue, that is why he doesn't eat. It's not because of hunger. It's not because of anything else that you might. It's not because I think cold weather, any of that stuff, right? I know cold weather slows his metabolism down, but I'm telling you, if everything's perfect, right? That's why they don't eat, is because something in the environment is not right. In most of the time, I would say it would be a water conditioning thing. Now that we can use that for the water's not in good shape, like it might be like crazy hot and there's no oxygen, right? It could be a cold front that massively gets cold. It could be, man, that the water is really not right, like the environment, like floods or droughts or all kinds of things. But that is it. If lakes are in good shape, okay, and everything's going good in that lake, everything thrives. But I'm telling you, if you mess up that environment he's in, okay, if you mess it up, dude, he shuts off like I've never seen before, and will shut off for days and weeks. And he can live a long time without eating. I have seen this, like, and it's crazy. Here's the reason I know all this. When I've had him, we've had little bits in times where he didn't act right, like things were going on with him, and it was very hard for me kind of to discern why a day or two might go and he won't eat, and then it'll kind of get back normal, okay? But this last time I had some issues over the fall. I went away from fishing for a while. And of course, if y'all know, I let my kids and my wife sometimes they have to feed them. Well, what happened is I think they left a shad in there. Like, they're not like me, like they'll throw shad in there just assume he's going to eat it. Well, I think he spit one up, and I don't think they realized it, and it was in the back behind a rock. Well, if you do that, what happens is it'll throw off the pH balance in the tank. So I get home, and the tank's real green, right? Like real green. And I've owned a fish tank growing up my whole life. And so it'd been a while through college I didn't have one and stuff like that. But I've owned one for years, never had this issue. And I was like, man. And if you notice, I have algae on the tank. I used to have snails in there, and they kept it done and things like that. And the algae never bothered me. I've been wanting to buy one of those algae eaters. The problem is I was scared. The ones that they were selling were too small, and I was always afraid he was going to eat them. So I wanted to try to find one if someone had one, like a bigger one that he wouldn't eat, to put it in there. But that's another story. So I get home, and it's real green. So I clean the tank, no big deal. It clears it up for the most part. And then all of a sudden, like 2 or 3 days later, it starts turning green bad again. So this goes on for a while. Well, he was okay with all the algae growth in there. Like what was going on was an algae bloom. Okay. So I had to read up all about this. I know what an algae bloom is, but I didn't know what really caused it. I know I've seen them in the lakes, but not in the fish tank. And I know a lot of it's from the sun and from light exposure, right? But man, I've had this tank for like 2 years. I've never had this. So, and it was in the fall. Like it stays over there in the summertime with the sun. So I knew something else was up. But once it started, I couldn't get rid of it. So if anyone's ever owned a fish tank, you know you're never supposed to clean more than like a third of the water, because that water that you usually have in there, it's a long story, but like the pH balance is right, everything's right. Well, I cleaned it. Didn't it 2 or 3 days later, nothing. So I cleaned it again. 2 or 3 days later, like green stuff comes back. So I was going, man. And so when I first got him, I used a lot of just normal water. Like I put the chlorine remover and everything else in there. But what happened is that like I was like, man, I got fed up with this deal. And so I just cleaned it out a lot, like 3/4 of it. Got it clean again, whatever. A week later, here it comes back again. But I probably did too much water. I probably cleaned too much water trying to get it all out. And that's when it all started. He was not acting right. He stopped eating. Everything. I messed it up. Like it was my fault. And so this goes on for like 2 to 3 weeks. And so we were like planning on releasing him, because I didn't, he looked all right. He didn't look bad. He just didn't want to eat. He would not eat anything. He'd go up there and eat a shad and spit it out. And it's crazy because they'll bite stuff, like even worms, anything. They'll bite stuff and still spit it out, even though they haven't eaten in a week, right? So it's not a hunger thing. Like he just didn't want to eat. And man, so we were about to let him go. It still bothered me though about this tank. So I did some research. I kept on reading stuff, and I was like, there was one last thing. There's a little device for like $50 you could buy, and it cleans out your water. It's a UV light, and it just runs water through that UV light and kills plankton. And I was like, let's just try this one time. The reviews were really good. I threw it in there. Within a week, things started like progressing better. He starts acting right again. I start feeding him again, and next thing you know, my tank's crystal clear again. That thing is awesome, by the way. And he's loving life, and this has been going on for about 3 to 4 months now. Dude, he hadn't missed a beat. He's eating more than he's ever eaten. He's in better shape than he looks really, really good. So I know that's a lot, but that's what I wanted to talk about. His environment is everything to him. So I also know this. From the beginning I got him, one of the issues I had was I'd be leaving for a long time, right? And if you've never noticed that, like, for all other fish that eat other fish, right? Like a lot of times people feed them, fish food. But anyone that's ever had certain types of fish, some fish like live food. I was like, no big deal. I'll get him a bunch of minnows. So when I first got him, I would leave and I would throw minnows in there because I'm like, hey, I'm going to be gone for a while. Not good. He went in there, ate as many as he could, okay, when I first got him. And then all of a sudden what would happen is like the minnows were all over the place, right? And he would sit there and like go sit down on the ground. And he started sitting down a lot. And when he would move, the minnows would go crazy and like scatter. And what I noticed, and I'd watch him, it stressed him out. Like it stressed him out. And it bothered him that minnows were over here and he was right here, and he'd go disturb them. But you can see your fish. Like I've owned him for a long time. Like I can see his breathing, like how he reacts. Like I can tell when he's in a good mood, like when everything's normal. Those minnows in that tank, he would shut down. Like after a day or two, he would chase them and bother him so much that it stressed him out. And he would then go sit in that tank on the bottom, on the corner, and not move for days. And he wouldn't eat him anymore. He would go kill him, and then they just die. Like he never ate another one. Like after a certain point, if there was like 15 left in there, he would never eat another one. It might go a week. He would not eat them. He would just kill them. He didn't want them in there. So I did that twice because I wanted to make sure the second time that's what was going on. I didn't actually wait that long the second time, but same deal. So I realized that he doesn't like another fish in there. I've put some perch in there. I wanted to see what happened there. One perch lived in there for weeks and it would just hide, and I didn't like what was going on with the perch, so we eventually let it go. He would either mainly just kill him. He would just chase him around until he killed him. He wouldn't even eat him. He did eat one, and then the ones that after that he didn't eat right away, he would just kill him. So the perch was a bad idea. So I can't put any kind of fish in there. If you put really, really small little minnows, like little bitty ones, those don't bother him, but he'll eat them in like a day. So the crawfish, I put crawfish in there and tadpoles. They don't seem to bother him a bit. I put crawfish in there. We had a big crawfish in there forever. He lived in there for about 3 months until one day he got out. He figured out how to finally crawl out, and we found him in the hallway. So I let it go because I didn't want it crawling out again and dying in the house somewhere and not finding it. So crawfish are fine. Tadpoles are fine. The tadpoles usually kind of don't move around. Neither do crawfish. So I think it's more of a movement type deal than anything else. I just don't think he likes things moving around in his tank. The tadpoles and crawfish have learned to stay still. They just do that on their own because I think they know in the wild they're going to get eaten if they don't. So that's my deal with that. It's like I said, though, it's environment. Everything has to do with his environment on why he shuts down. It's not everything else we might think of. For me, that is what I've noticed, right? Is like I said, the water being bad, stuff in his environment, things like that bother him. Everything else, hunger, availability of food, what he eats, stuff like that, no, he's going to eat. Now, let's get into the eating part. Like I said, when I first did this, when I first got him, it was more in the springtime. So like I said, we had crawfish, worms. I wasn't worried about any of that stuff. Was feeding them all kinds of different stuff. Everything. Didn't really matter. Like we'd throw grub worms in there, anything the kids found. Or I found, we were always looking for stuff. Trying to see what he liked the best. Crickets. Okay. I'm getting the cricket deal. So as I'm feeding him, I'm just thinking, oh, he's going to eat earthworms anytime he wants to, stuff like that. And I did the earthworm video and I showed that like he likes them, but he can get tired of earthworms, right? I think he'll eat crawfish forever too. Okay. And I would love to keep hundreds of crawfish in there constantly. And that's probably what I would do. I will say when he digests them though, you do get a lot of claws and a lot of things like that all over the tank. So it kind of makes it a little bit more messier with crawfish. The shad are the easiest. He likes them the best. It's an easy process for me to keep them. You've seen that whole process. So the shad, he seems to, like I said, he's been eating shad now for the last 4 months, nonstop. I got 2 more months before I can probably catch crawfish and stuff again. And then I'll probably feed him nothing but crawfish and stuff like that for the next couple months, as long as I can keep him and catch them. Okay, so here's the other interesting things. And I'm going to run through all these really quick. Tell you one thing. This is going into some pretty cool stuff. Grasshoppers, like the big green ones. He will explode on a grasshopper once. And I mean once, like he's done it maybe twice now ever in his life. He will not hit him ever again. I threw a grasshopper in there. He eats them. He tries it, whatever. I think it's the legs. They just don't feel right to him. And he eventually just kills it and spits it out. And like I said, anything I put over that tank, he will usually come up. Has no idea what it is. He will usually come up and explode on it. I can hold a grasshopper now over that tank. He won't touch it. He won't touch it. And like I said, I can usually trick him by throwing it in the water. And if they like kick around and do stuff, things will move and he'll eat just because it's his instinct. Not a grasshopper. No more. And so it starts getting me thinking about like this fishing stuff, right? About bass eating a bait and something bad happening to him. I mean, that's not even getting hooked, right? That's not even getting hooked, drugged to the boat, thrown in a live well, and none of that stuff. Like, he looks at a grasshopper and is like, I don't want no part of that. It doesn't hurt him. He just doesn't like it. I fed him a roach. He'll eat a roach. I've caught, I was just killing them, or they'll be outside or whatever. My kid will find one and smash it where it's not just smashed horrible, and he'll eat one of those. I don't know how many he'll eat because we don't go around catching roaches constantly. And they're probably not much protein or much anything, but he will eat them. He doesn't mind like those brownish black crickets. He doesn't mind those. any kind of thing like earthworm, anything that kind of feels right, right? I don't think he likes anything really hard. He likes more like softer things like that. I've never seen him turn down a fish. Now, the perch deal, right? I think someone asked, hey, what about a perch or a bluegill? Here's the thing with him. Like I said, he'll eat anything if you hold it over that tank. Like, he'll try it once. So he's not sitting there going, oh, I'm going to eat this over this. I think he's just opportunistic. So whatever it is, I don't think he's picking and choosing. And I don't think I have the right environment for him to pick and choose, right? I think he's just always looking for something. I say he's always looking for something too, because there was a deal, I watched the show years and years ago, and I'll never forget this. They said, what's the #1 killingest cat, right? And you would think, okay, is it going to be a tiger, a lion, or anything? No, it's the house cat. And the reason is because all the animals in the wild have to exert energy to go try to kill something, right? For food. So they only hunt when they like have to, right? They're not going to just go overly and hunt every day. Like, they don't want to exert that energy. Well, house cat has food at home. So house cat can eat anytime it wants to, so it can hunt as much as it wants to. So it's always out there if it wants to hunting, because it doesn't matter if it wins or loses. His life doesn't depend on it. He can come home and eat. So same thing with him. I think he'll eat constantly because he's not exerting a whole bunch of energy, you know, doing all these things. So he's just opportunistic. Whatever it throws in there, he'll eat. Now, back in the day, before I lived at this house, we lived at another house while me and my wife just got married. And they had a big pond out there, and I used to help with the pond and manage it to a degree. And we had a bunch of big fish in there and all kinds of stuff. Well, I would feed it. I got used, and I probably need to do a whole video on this, but I would get used. I went out there one time and I fed the perch. They had just monster perch in there. And I used to go throw like table scraps all the time out there. Well, we had a bunch of old pizza, and I threw a pizza in there, and a bass came up there and exploded on it, a slice of the pizza. And I was like, but I started noticing the grease on the pepperoni, and I think that's really what he was after. Well, I started like experimenting with things I could feed him. Well, I went out there and like old chicken, like old meat, like bone, things like that. And all of a sudden they got used to me coming down there every day, and I would feed them stuff. Well, we had shot a pig out there, a hog, and I cleaned it up and started just taking that meat down there. I had to freeze it and unthaw it, but I'd go out there and throw it in there. And man, for like months, I would feed these bass big chunks of meat, man, and like I had certain ones that would eat it. So I was like, hey, that was an option here, right? Well, I did that once or twice. That thing loves it, right? Would eat it all day long, bacon, all that stuff. Problem is, it only takes you once or twice. When he does it, that grease gets in your tank, and then it becomes all greasy, and I was like, oh, I didn't think about that. And what I noticed too, you don't notice it because out in that pond, they would eat it every day. They loved it, right? I swear it was like candy to them. What I didn't realize is you don't watch him constantly, right? So I would watch him, and when he would digest it and it'd go through him, yeah, it didn't look normal. Like I think it was running through him, and I don't think his digestive tract is right for that. And so, yeah, bacon would come out long and stringy. Like, I don't think it was right. Plus, it got the tank greasy, so I can't do that. But they would, I'm telling you, they'd eat it nonstop. The reason I bring all that stuff up is, and especially like the grasshopper. The grasshopper was interesting to me. I think about all the times we're going around and throwing baits out there, or like even flipping. And I'm a tournament guy, so I'm out there flipping baits and shaking them off, right? Well, I've seen him, and he's smart, right? He knows what a shad is. Like he sees a shad from across the room and wants to eat it, and he knows it's going to be good for him. He sees a grasshopper and instantly like turns his nose at, like he doesn't want any part of it. And you wonder about flipping a bait in there, and even though it didn't hurt him, like you pull on it and he spits it out. And think about like shaking off a fish 2 or 3 times. It's like him eating a grasshopper but never really eating it. Next time you throw in there, there's a good chance, in my opinion, that bass is going to be like, hey, I've tried that 2 or 3 times and it's not really what I want. I really think that that's a big deal now. And I think it's getting more of a big deal with this pressure deal. Now, I think you can trick him if he gets all excited and he's in a feeding mood, right? I think you could trick him, but I think that's what's really going on, and it's really got me interested. I'll tell you the other thing too is he'll eat stuff off the bottom, on the top. Obviously, he likes to feed on the top. Most bass do, because if you notice, God created him that way. That's why his eyes are up here on his head, not down here, right? It's harder for him to look down. It's easier for him to look up. He will explode on things on top of the water multiple times, but doesn't like to. Like, his first initial strike is his hardest and most aggressive. His second one, and even if he does do it a third time, gets less and less aggressive. But then there's a point to where he's kind of like, my wife gets mad at him a lot because he's kind of moody. But if he blows up on something and doesn't get it, sometimes, like, I don't care how hungry he is, like, I'll wave something over him and he just sits there and looks at me. He won't come up there and eat. I'll have to wait like 20 minutes and come back, and then he's all like, he's hungry some more, and I'm like, all right, well, here, and I'll feed him something and he'll eat it. So it's really strange. I like him exploding on something, coming out of the water like that, or like getting in a big giant frenzy, kind of stresses him out a little bit sometimes, and then he gets like kind of like a little jerk, like he doesn't want to eat, and he just sits there. You could go sit down for 15 minutes and he's over there like making a commotion saying, hey, I want something to eat, and we're like, we just tried to feed you. It's a weird deal, but it makes me think that, like, sometimes when like a fish explodes on a top water or things like that, why they don't come back and eat. Sometimes he will, but a lot of times, I mean, he's right there, he knows he can go eat something, I've got it for him, like a shad, and he still won't come. So pretty interesting. I had a lot of people ask me this question. Okay, they want to know about like barometric pressure, him eating, and like temperature stuff. So look, guys, this is in my house, right? So temperature wise, our house stays between a certain 5 to 7 degrees, right? It never changes from that. Cold, hot, summertime, wintertime, doesn't matter. So that water temperature is a level degree, probably the level he wants it at, probably around 70, 68 to 70. I'm not gonna sit there and like get it cold, like crazy cold, like drop it 30 to 20 degrees, just for purposes. I wouldn't even know how to do it. I have to add tons of ice and do all that, and then I'd have to like heat it back up. I'm not gonna do all that. Sorry, guys. I don't really want to. I don't know why it would be good for him, and so I'm not doing that. The barometric pressure deal, there's something to it. Now remember, guys, the pressure we can still feel inside the house and stuff, but I still think there's a correlation with the barometric pressure and then the water temperature dropping as well. Like both those two go hand in hand. So I see it at times, not all the time, like every once in a while, like a big giant storm. I remember when the hurricanes were coming or something like that, he would get crazy, like a massive, like a hardcore storm coming. I've seen him kind of like move around some more, go crazy. And the other day, this giant cold front hit, and he seemed to sit on the bottom for 2 or 3 days. I'm looking at him right now, and he's moving around. It's cold, but it's been cold for a couple of days. He's moving around, no big deal. But he did sit around for a couple of days when that front first hit. On my last video, I showed it. That's when I made it, and I was showing that. So, like I said, does he eat more, or does he want to eat more? Like, man, right now it doesn't really matter. He's in such a stable environment that he just wants to eat constantly. Not constantly, but like I could probably feed him probably once every 2 or 3 hours, and he would eat. And so that one's a little tough for me on trying to change his environment. He's in a stable environment, guys. So it's one of those deals that's kind of tough. Some other things here and there, like I said, I try to turn the lights off at night for him. That's the thing. Every time at night too, I say I try to turn the lights off because like my wife and them sometimes don't turn the light on for him during the day, just so he's not always in the light. But he's right by our glass door window, so like even right now, light kind of shines in on him pretty bright. So he gets still a lot of light, but I mean, fish hang out under trees and shade and all that stuff. So he gets a lot of different kind of light variations. At night, I turn it off for one reason and I don't want any lights on in the house, even like a small light, because I don't know if they sleep or what the deal is, but when it's dark, he goes down to that bottom. Like I'll walk in and it's dark and I can see in there and he's not moving. So I think that's his like downtime, right? I assume he gets 12 hours of it a night in normal. So I try to give him something like that when we're here at night too. I don't want lights on all the time on him, to where I think he would swim around more, and maybe that makes him more anxious. I'm not sure, but like I said, I try to keep him calm as much as possible, because I think that's what he feels most comfortable. That's where he's stable. Go back to my first comment. The water, it's a water quality environment type deal. I just don't think people realize. And number one thing I see with people when fish aren't biting or like lakes aren't doing very good, people always just go to the fact of, oh, well, y'all don't know how to catch them, or the fish have changed and moved somewhere else. And I'm like, no, like fish don't all of a sudden just change what they're doing for the last 30 years. Like they're going to go where bait is, they're going to go do certain things. But what I've seen is there's a water quality environment, right? And it could be numerous things that we have no idea about. Like I said, floods, droughts, cold, hot, like a lake's just in a bad shape because there's a bad turnover, right? All these different things, I'm telling you, will totally make that fish like shut down. And guys, it's not like, oh, that fish went from eating 10 shad a day to 1 shad a day. They go to not eating for long periods of time. Like he can go weeks without eating, and he's not real skinny. He doesn't become thin. And like you've seen catch those bass that are real thin and whatever. He never looked like that. Like even when I feed him a bunch every day, he'll look a little bit thicker, but he doesn't become thin. I think those thin fish are fish that are dying. Like they're old. Something's not right with them, but it's not because they're not eating a bunch. In the sense of they're not going to probably live very long. That's just an unhealthy fish that's probably going to die at some point in time. He doesn't look like that when he stops eating. He still looks pretty decent. And it shocked me too, because he doesn't become that paper thin fish that we see sometimes. So with that being said, just take into account, guys, if something's going on with y'all's lakes and it's not going good, right? It's not fishing good, and it starts to trend that way for a while, that's a lot of the reason. There's something going on that we can't see, and it's affecting those fish and the way they're eating. And vice versa, when you get places like, let's say, O.H. Ivy, right? That seems to be like crazy fertile for the last couple of years. Every fish is growing massive. It's not the fact, yeah, it has good genes, but that whole system is like thriving, right? Everything from the smallest little plankton throughout, like from every little bait fish, perch, everything thrives when a reservoir or a lake like that is going good. We've seen it down there with like Falcon and Choke and Amstead. Water comes up and gets on the trees, and everything's like alive again. But then all of a sudden when it dies back down and water drops and there's not as much bait and everything seems to get worse, right? It's a water quality. It's an environment issue. Like they don't grow as big. They're not out there. The lake's not thriving. So I don't know what we do about that, but that's what's going on. It's not because they're not hungry. It's not because, they want to eat. Like if everything's going good, they want to eat constantly. So long video, I know it, guys, but I wanted to clear up everything that I learned from them. This is the end. This is the end of, not the end of Little Whiskey, just the end of Little Whiskey's videos for right now, unless some other cool stuff happens. So anyways, hope y'all enjoyed it. See y'all.